Greetings and salutations, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to my channel. You all made my last Fallout 76 challenge video the most popular one on my channel, and I can't be more thankful. It also allowed me to finally pass 1,000 subscribers, giving me even more confidence to do another one. And after a very helpful suggestion by one of my faithful viewers, I decided to find out, can you beat Fallout 76 as a hunter? Now for this challenge, there are two parts to it. Originally, I was only going to limit myself to weapons that a hunter would normally use. And though you technically can hunt with any weapon, I wanted more traditional ones. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that just beating the game wouldn't be enough. I was a hunter after all, so that meant my life was facing down tough creatures and bringing them to their knees. So with that, I decided to give myself another challenge, to kill one of every natural enemy in the game. By this I'm referring to things like bugs, animals, mutants, etc. Basically everything except robots. And since it's required to beat the Scorch Beast Queen in order to finish the main story, it fit in well with my set rules. I figured this would not only give me more of a challenge, but also allow me to level up further and gain more advanced weapons than what I got in my last playthrough challenge. Lastly, before we begin, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so I can continue making videos just like this. So, with all of that out of the way, let's begin. Once again, I wake up in the vault and begin making my character. This time I was going for a more gruff and toughened character, one that had seen some things and fought some terrible creatures before the war. Unfortunately, he ended up looking a little bit more like a raider, but I still think he fit the bill. Plus, it was better than him looking like Van Pelt. I named myself Grizz Stonejaw, grabbed my personal hunting computer, and made my way out of the vault. It was here that I learned about the new training wheels system they have for new players. But since I was an experienced Fallout player, I went with the normal starting level and perks. Though since I was forced to, I took the Action Dweller perk card, since I knew I'd be running around a lot. Once outside, I stole from the donation box and found out I already had a combat knife to start out with. I left the included 10mm, then headed off into the wild, where I immediately fought my first enemy, ghouls. Now normally I'd only count them if they were more of a challenge, but since I fought so many of them during this run, at much higher levels, I'll just count them now. Ghouls. Check. A few seconds later I crossed another kill off my list. Frogs. Check. After introducing myself to the local responders and helping them with their hunting, I found Thumper and promptly sent him to Bambi's mom, who I also found nearby. Rabbit. Check. I then stopped by a local farm and found some beavers, closely followed by a Scorched. Though like the ghoul, it was too low a level for me at the time, but again I'll count it now since I fought and killed tougher ones later. Beaver and Scorched, check. After taking the Butcher's Bounty perk to get more meat from my kills, I went to the Overseer's camp to build myself some weapons and better armor. Deciding to forego the Wayward questline, I instead headed to Flatwoods to continue with the main story. Along the way, I found Bambi, and reunited him with Mom and Thumper. Radstag Doe, check. Approaching Flatwoods, I found a group of mongrels and promptly cut them to pieces. Mongrels, check. Once I was in the town, I went about doing the requirements in order to join the responders. While collecting water, I managed to kill some rather pesky rodents and add them to my list. Mole rats, check. Then, in order to cook a juicy steak, I was required to kill a Brahmin for its meat. But at least I could cross it off the list. Brahmin, check. With that done, I completed my responder training and was told to head for Morgantown. On the way, I passed by a Slocum's Joe and battled some ticks, but they were no match for my knife. Ticks. Check. I arrived at Morgantown and made my way through the airport, gathering a pump-action shotgun and a hunting rifle along the way. This was excellent as I now finally had weapons that could deal more damage quicker. I also gathered up all pump actions and rifles I could so I could scrap them for upgrades. With my new assignment to find a cure for the plague, I headed back to Flatwoods to get myself ready. While there, I took another creature off the list. Opossum. Check. I then started making my way to Charleston by way of the Dried River under the New River Gorge Bridge. Along the way, I came across some super mutants that proved to be a tough fight, but in the end I won and had another creature off the list. Super mutants. Check. At Charleston Station, I went about upgrading my weapons before heading into the city proper. I encountered the super mutant trader Graham nearby, where I saw he had an Executioner's Dragon for sale. One video too late. I did end up buying a Hunter's Switchblade, realizing too late that it was at level 50. Spoilers, I never ended up using it, so that was a waste of 78 caps. I did spot a Grafton monster nearby, but decided against killing it as this one is known for being easy and I wanted more of a challenge. Instead, I focused on getting on with the main quest. I found a cure for the Scorched in Charleston, then found a group of super mutants attacking a Snallygaster. As it too was very weak, I decided to save my kill for a more powerful target. After I joined the Fire Breathers, I was sent to find Madigan at the top of the world. But at this time I realized I needed a place where I could set up base and take stock, and there was only one location that fit the bill: the Black Bear Hunting Lodge. Marking my destination and fast traveling to another player's camp, I set off through the Toxic Valley. Along the way I fought 2 rad scorpions, which I'll count now since, again, I fought more powerful ones later. Rad scorpions. Check. Unfortunately, I also came across some Mirelurks that were much tougher than me, but thanks to some skillful maneuvers I was able to take them down, and since they were at a higher level than me, they counted towards my goal. Mirelurks. Check. But just a few seconds later I was killed by a group of Mothman cultists, giving me my first loss of the run. Happily, I came right back a few seconds later and killed them both. I then ran into some more Snallygasters, but again their levels were too low. Once I arrived at the hunting lodge, I wasted no time in clearing out the undesirables. My original goal was to build my camp in the ruins of the building itself, but unfortunately it wouldn't allow me. So instead, I set up shop in the backyard, building my own hunting cabin around the target already set up. It also gave me the added bonus of being right next to a spawn location, meaning I'd have a constant stream of creatures to hunt whenever I fast traveled there. I set up a vending machine to sell my unneeded guns and ammo, once again naming my camp cheap items in order to draw in business. But unlike last time, I made sure to make my camp's icon visible to others. Hearing some fighting coming from Graninger Farm, I found some settlers battling a Ogwa. Since I'd need to defeat one eventually, I tried helping out, but once I realized I wasn't doing anything, I quickly ran away to fight another day. But the trip wasn't for nothing, as I soon found and killed the next target on my list. Honeybeast. Check. Wanting to expand my arsenal a little bit, I headed to the nearby Pioneer Scout camp to find either a bow or a crossbow. While clearing out the camp, I quickly ticked 3 more creatures off my list. Ant, Bloatfly, and Radroach. Check. Scout Leader Jaggy gave me a few tasks to complete, so I dug deep into my memories to remember everything I'd learned during my time as a Cub and Eagle Scout. I decided to start with cleanliness, so I headed to some nearby cabins to clean up toxic waste. I didn't end up getting a bow or crossbow from doing so, which meant I had to keep looking. Heading back to the Pioneer camp, I ended up finding another creature for me to swat. Bloodbug. Check. Once I found the shooting range, I also found the blueprints for a crossbow. I fast traveled back to my camp, gathered some supplies from the hunting lodge, and built myself a weapons workstation, which I quickly used to upgrade my weapons. After coming across someone else's kill at Seneca Rocks, I headed for the top of the world. Rose once again asked me to help her out, so I began doing her quests. While doing so, I came across a Blood Eagle Raider with an attack dog, which I promptly sent to heaven. Dogs. Check. Then while collecting the plans for the signal repeater, I had my first hallelujah moment. For you see, there are many creatures on my list that are hard to find. Rare, some would say. And one of those creatures is aliens, which I thought I'd have to be lucky to encounter. But thankfully, I started this playthrough just as Bethesda decided to give us another run of Invaders from Beyond, which meant I had a chance to kill some aliens. I joined the event, being transported to Mananga, which was infested with mole miners. I quickly took one down, giving me another one off the list. Mole miners, check. Once the aliens started their invasion, I helped out as best I could. Though most of the people there had levels in the triple digits, allowing them to tear through most of them, I was able to kill a few with my shotgun. Unfortunately, I did miss out on killing a Flatwoods monster. Not long after, the invasion had been repelled. I felt like Will Smith in Independence Day.
Welcome to Earth.
Aliens. Check.
That's what I call a close encounter.
With the War of the Worlds over, I got back to helping Rose. While collecting parts for the repeater, I battled some super mutants and their little dog too. Mutant Hound. Check. Once Rose had gotten her repeater, she tasked me with doing a few more things for her. And if you remember my last playthrough, you'll remember that I got stuck here since I couldn't use the syringe rifle, even though many of you in the comments claimed otherwise. Thankfully, there were no issues or confusion this time. Since I would be using it on animals, that meant it was fair game. First things first, I had to find a Yao Guai. Thankfully, I discovered Site Alpha already, and one always spawns nearby, so I fast traveled there and there was no Yao Guai. So instead, I tagged another location and traveled there. Along the way, I was lucky enough to come across a Mothman just standing around. But for a reason that's become lost to me since then, I decided against fighting it, and much like the Flatwoods monster, I'd come to regret this later. Eventually I made it to Monongah Overlook and found a Yao Guai. After shooting it full of karma, I took out my shotgun and put the poor thing out of its misery. Yao Guai. Check. Next I had to construct some explosive bait to lure in an animal. Once I had done so, I used them on some wild mongrels, but then Rose gave me the task of finding a Deathclaw and making friends with it. This would be tough for me since I knew that any Deathclaw I could find at this stage that wouldn't kill me wouldn't satisfy my requirements. Still, I figured I could probably complete the mission without actually killing it. So after another repair session at my cabin, I headed off to find a Deathclaw. I eventually found one near the top of the world, and as suspected it was too low a level for me. I attempted to make friends with it, but it wasn't really in the mood. I tried my best to kill it, but eventually decided running was the best option. I ran to the cliff and attempted to jump somewhere it couldn't reach, but it actually followed me, causing it to fall down the cliff to its death. Given its level, and the fact I wasn't attempting to kill it, I decided not to count it towards the goal. After stealing a missile launcher from a super mutant and killing a feral ghoul, Rose sent me to gather the code to the raider's stash. I headed off to do so, discovering the White Springs along the way. I also found my first set of power armor, which I took for use at a later time. During a trip to camp, I finally crafted my next weapon, a crossbow. Checking the trapper's camp, I found the next creature on the list of ones to kill. Radrat. Check. With that, I traveled to Huntersville to grab another key fragment, which was tough given most of the super mutants were much stronger than I was, and also one of them had a minigun, but with some clever hiding and nice shots I made it out okay. Plus, on the way to get the next code, I made another kill. Firefly. Check. I also stopped by the Palace of the Winding Path, where I found a nice little Easter egg I hadn't noticed before.
We're gonna watch this new TV show back at our place. You wanna come?
But when I was going through the sludge hole, I came across 2 level 60 rad toads. I wasn't planning on fighting them, but when I saw how much damage my shotgun did, I decided to give it a try, which resulted in my quick death. I tried again, this time managing to kill one by keeping my distance. Unfortunately, I still had one left, but with a lot of running and stim packs, I was able to take it out as well. If this wasn't proof of my skill as a hunter, I don't know what was. Rad toads. Check. After that, I arrived at the Wendigo Cave to receive the final key, and hopefully another kill for my list. Once inside, I found a few Mirelurks as well as their extended family. Though the Mirelurks weren't a problem, the Mirelurk King was, as it quickly took me out. Trying again resulted in the same outcome, and I decided I needed to better prepare for this fight. I went and bought some medical supplies, fixed my armor, and cooked some food. Heading back to the cave, I used everything I'd bought and made to keep me alive long enough to finally land the finishing blow. Mirelurk King. Check. Heading deeper into the cave, I fought more Mirelurks before eventually coming across my next target, a Wendigo, and in a surprise turn of events, it only took 2 shots from my crossbow to take him out. Wendigo. Check. Rose then told me to go get David's code piece, so I headed off to Big Fred's barbecue shack. But unluckily for me, the Scorched there were level 50, and despite my best efforts, I soon fell to their pitchforks. Respawning, I tried again, this time managing to kill them while they were distracted by a blood eagle. Despite all my work, Rose made me go find Rosalind's body to get her program, so I headed to Charleston and fought my way through the Capitol building. Finding the corpse, Rose told me of her deception, and I headed back to the top of the world. I grabbed the uplink and was directed to Abby's bunker in the mire. As I was heading that way, I came across Vault 94. Knowing the kind of creatures that reside in it, I decided to head inside. I mostly found myself killing Mirelurks, but I did eventually come across a few I hadn't killed yet, so I promptly corrected that. Mirelurk Hunter and Spawn, check. After going full Chosen One and finding the Gek, I left to continue the main quest. As I was passing the East Ridge Lookout, I found some Scorched battling a level 75 Blue Devil. Not learning anything from my Ogwa encounter earlier, I decided to try and kill it. After it nearly killed me though, I ran up the tower and decided to wait until I was a higher level to battle one. Running away into the mire, I came across a pack of Mirelurks and their queen. The Mirelurks weren't a problem, but I just wasn't ready to overthrow their monarch. Once more having to run away from a powerful enemy, I finally reached Abby's bunker. Once the uplink was repaired, I was tasked with repairing the Scorched detection system. While passing by Thunder Mountain, I encountered a hermit crab, which again was too powerful to defeat, though I did note down the location so I could come back when ready. After crafting the upgraded fan motors, I headed across the mire to install them. Along the way I came across more super mutant lackeys and had another kill for my list. Floaters! Check! Once the fans were installed, I headed back to the top of the world to give Rose a holotape. Back in Abby's bunker, I was told to head to Harper's Ferry. After battling through the armory, I traveled to Charleston to hack Blackwell's terminal. Once I had uploaded the data and rebooted Abby's bunker, it was time to find the Brotherhood of Steel. While traveling through the mire, I discovered the location Treetops, as well as a lumbering megasloth. Pulling out my crossbow, I fought valiantly against the lumbering brute from the safety of the treehouse. Despite its attempts to hide, my patience and skill soon rewarded me with another kill for my list. Megasloth. Check. Reaching Camp Venture, I fought off the Scorched and found the location of Fort Defiance. Since I would be spending a lot of time on the southern end of the map, I traveled back to Treetops and considered moving my camp there. After all, I'd have mega sloths to keep me company. But since I couldn't build it close enough to the tree itself, I decided to stick with the hunting lodge, though I did add some more defenses to ensure it wasn't damaged while I was away. Heading towards Fort Defiance, I passed through the freak show and ticked another kill off my list. Wolves. Check. After spending way too much time collecting all the caps lying around, I finally made it to Fort Defiance. Heading inside, I battled my way through the waves of charred feral ghouls, only to learn I'd gone the wrong way. Heading back down and going the way I was supposed to, I was told I'd have to join the army to go any further. So I traveled to Camp McClintock, completed basic training, and became an official army soldier. Now I was just like my grandfather, except I'm fighting mutant creatures in a video game. And he fought Nazis in World War II. It's pretty much the same thing. After that, it was time to deal with the most horrible, challenging, and downright despicable event in the whole game. Dealing with government bureaucracy.
All required paperwork for ID renewal is in order. Error. Department B is for renewals only. Department C is designated for new IDs. Have a nice day.
Now that I had my ID, I could head back to Fort Defiance and get access to the Brotherhood's secrets. Well, at least most of them, as to see the rest I had to find Taggarty. Before doing that though, I decided to see once again if I could build my camp in the mire closer to the south of the map. But when I did, I ended up finding a glowing beast that I had yet to kill, and using the same trick I used on the sloth, I quickly took it off said list. Snallygaster. Check. I headed back to camp to do some crafting, then went about fixing radio broadcasters in order to find Taggarty. The trail did lead me through Watoga, which I opted not to bother with repairing since I wouldn't be there often. I then encountered my next target who, despite their names, weren't located in a cave. Cave Cricket. Check. When I reached Survey Camp Alpha, I found it under attack by a Scorch Beast. I repaired the missile launcher to keep it busy and hopefully take it down while I looted, but seeing this as an opportunity, I decided to get in on the fight. I fought most of the Scorched while the launcher dealt with the big boy, but once the little ones were dealt with, I joined in on fighting the Scorch Beast. Unfortunately, I soon realized that this fight would take forever, and I might not even win it, so instead I continued on with my mission to find Taggarty. But my bad luck wasn't over as the trail led me to Glassed Cavern, which was inside a nuclear blast zone. I ran as fast as I could towards the entrance since I didn't have a radiation suit or power armor. Once inside, I fought my way to the main cavern where I found my greatest challenge yet, a Scorch Beast. Since I didn't have any weapons that could deal a lot of damage quickly, I had to resort to my go-to method for dealing with creatures like this, standing somewhere it couldn't get me and taking pot shots at it. It was a long and drawn-out process that resulted in a lot of radiation damage, but after a few minutes the creature was dead, and with it one of my targets was now off the list. Scorch Beast. Check. Once I'd found Taggarty, I went back to Fort Defiance to go through her stuff. Seeing as I had to find Sam Blackwell, I headed to the Charleston Herald and found the location of his bunker. Heading there, I found the cave occupied by 2 Deathclaws, a tough challenge for anyone, except me, of course. With a little trickery, sidestepping, and clever shots, I managed to take down 2 Deathclaws at once. And even though their levels were a little too low to me, I decided that their combined levels made it a level 50 fight, making them eligible for the list. Deathclaws. Check. Entering the bunker, I searched through secret government documents until I found the congressional bunker key. As I made my way to the White Springs, I stopped by the Middle Mountain pit stop, as I knew I'd need to get there quickly if a certain event was happening. Once I got to the White Springs, I tried to help fight off a super mutant attack, but only succeeded in making the robots angry at me. But once they were all dead, I made my way to the White Springs proper. And I knew it had been a long time since I last played this game, as everything that was there now wasn't back then. So I headed inside and introduced myself to the new residents. I then did some trading in the White Springs Mall before heading outside. However, there was a problem. You see, just after I entered the White Springs, someone decided to launch a nuke. I didn't bother looking at where they targeted, since most choose to target Fisher Site Prime, so you can imagine my shock when I opened the doors and saw this on the other side. I was once again outside in a nuke site without power armor or a radiation suit, so I decided to beeline for the bunker entrance before I went all Cooper Howard, and with enough sprinting and luck, I managed to make it with my skin still smooth. Once past the laser grid, I was invited inside the bunker and met its sole occupant. Modus assigned me with helping him get the bunker back to full working order. So after taking a questionnaire, I helped him take control of Sugar Grove, and re-established his connection to an orbital platform. Now that I was a member of the Enclave, Modus tasked me with obtaining the rank of General in order to gain access to the nukes. So I headed back out into the wasteland to kill more creatures on my list and earn promotion commendations. I tried to do so by once again completing Invaders from Beyond, but that didn't go so well. Ultimately, I just ended up running around the map for a while trying to find something to complete my objectives, as well as just goofing off a little. So I customized my weapons, explored Vault 51, became a pack alpha, went treasure hunting, helped lure out a Wendigo, almost died in Watoga, and discovered a few new locations. While passing by Fred's barbecue, I found another creature to kill for my list. Fox. Check. Then, while taking part in the Heart of the Swamp event, I tried taking down a rather tough Grafton monster. But just as I was about to kill it, I accidentally went into a cave, and when I came out, the creature was gone. Meaning I'd have to keep searching for a powerful Grafton monster. In the meantime, I went back to completing Enclave objectives in order to become a general. I also stopped by the bunker entrance and racked up another kill. Squirrel. Check. And not too long after that, I found a shack with another creature to kill. Cats. Check. I then did my best to help with the eviction notice event, even though there was little I could do given my level and armor situation. But that didn't stop me from getting some sweet loot. After that, I walked nearby and discovered Foundation, hoping to find some chickens in the pen I could kill, but spoilers, I never ended up finding any in Foundation, which sucked since it was supposedly the only guaranteed spawn point. I checked a few other spawn points in the hopes of finding some creatures I hadn't killed yet. Unfortunately, all I got were repeats. That is, until I reached the Gnarled Shallows, where I found a few anglers just standing around. And I mean literally standing around, as they didn't even move once as I was firing at them. Though I did attempt to find ones that would attack, I just couldn't do so. But since I ended up finding ones later that did, I'll just count these now. Angler. Check. I then headed to Gulper Lagoon to kill some, well, I think the name speaks for itself. Gulpers. Check. After that, I went about doing more quests to raise my Enclave rank, and after discovering Braxton's quality medical supplies, I finally had enough. So I headed back to the bunker where I was declared a general and given access to the nuclear silos. Though I did go and get a nuclear keycard, I decided to hold off on launching a nuke since I still had a lot to do before the endgame. I was once again relegated to doing whatever I could in order to find some of the more elusive creatures on my list, and while I was passing through Huntersville, I remembered one that was nearby. So I headed to the town's water source where I found my next target. As expected, this guy was pretty tough, and I had a few close calls while fighting him, but at one point he just stopped moving, allowing me to take quick shots at him, and by the time he started moving again, it was too late. Another one had bitten the dust. Super Mutant Behemoth. Check. With that, I headed back to my camp to unload, then walked a short distance to the nearby lake. Luckily for me, I found one of my next targets here, and even better, it started fighting a Snallygaster while vertibirds shot at them. I took out my crossbow and dealt some damage to both of them before the queen took out the Snallygaster. She then turned her attention towards me, but she seemed to have a fear of walking around corners, so I sat there taking shots where I could until she was dead. Mirelurk Queen, check. Next, I went to Point Pleasant in the hope of encountering the Mothman. Unfortunately, all I found were his followers and eggs, so I continued looking elsewhere. However, at that point I stopped recording for the day, and when I logged back in, I did end up finding a Mothman nearby. Unfortunately, it fled after one shot, so it couldn't hear the cursing I did immediately after. After a lot of running around doing nothing and making a few minor adjustments to my cabin, I decided I was finally tough enough to do some expeditions. So I headed to the White Springs and began helping the people around it. I made some soup, gathered medical information, and donated some building material. But while I was doing so, I had another hallelujah moment, for just then the event Safe and Sound began, which I knew ended with a creature I needed for my list. So I headed over to the Blue Ridge pit stop and began taking care of the infestation. However, after fixing the circuit breakers, things got hectic real fast. So many creatures showed up I came close to dying on multiple occasions. Thankfully, I wasn't the only one participating, and we got through most of the creatures pretty quickly. But soon, something else came out of the forest.
The big one.
This one was even more powerful than the last one I fought, but I wasn't alone this time. After shooting it a few times, I tried taking care of the smaller creatures while those with more experience dealt with the mutated wolf. It was a long and tough fight, which I managed to get through with just one death. In the end, the event was cleared and I had another kill on my list. Blue Devil, check. But the real prize was the special weapon that I got for completing the events, the Kabloom. A pump-action shotgun that dealt explosive damage, superior armor penetration, and a faster reload speed. I quickly swapped it out with my old pump-action and went about upgrading it. Though unfortunately, I couldn't change the flower paint job. I decided that it could work as camo in the forest region. Now that I was friends with the responders, I was finally able to use their vertibird to travel to the pit. Heading to the industrial district, I was given a few tasks to complete in the area, and while dealing with a few rad roaches, I learned that shooting my new Kabloom too close would result in me getting hit, something that would become a norm for the rest of the run. After that, I went around doing other tasks for the Union, such as freeing prisoners and sabotaging the Fanatics, which was actually really tough and stressful given how many automatic weapons they used. Needless to say, I died a lot while dealing with them. But once I did, I had another enemy to fight. One that I had not seen since my days playing Fallout 3. And boy, were they tough, especially when they ganged up on me. But with a lot of shooting and cursing, I managed to kill them. Trog. Check. But almost immediately after, I had more to fight, including their big brother called the Trog Devourer. I ended up dying even more here than I did in the factory, even getting underneath the map at one point. Sadly, most of the people I was supposed to protect ended up dead. It was only after dying, for what felt like the millionth time, did I finally give that thing the kiss of death. Trog Devourer. Check. With all the creatures I could find here in the pit taken care of, I headed on back to West Virginia. Once there, I did some checking around again to see if I could find any more rare creatures. I even joined another Invaders from Beyond event in the hopes of encountering a Flatwoods monster. Unfortunately, all of this once again came to naught. I did end up finding another Ogwa, but once again I was too low level with weapons that didn't do enough damage. So instead, I headed off to do the Queen of the Hunt event, in the hope of finding a rare creature. Unfortunately, all I got was a glowing Yaoguai and Snallygaster. Not getting anywhere in West Virginia, I decided to begin a new expedition to Atlantic City. I decided to start with the Boardwalk since I wasn't given any instruction with this one. Upon arriving, Veracio enrolled me in a local game that would surely result in my death. Wanting to look around, I agreed and began my run within a run. I was instantly set upon by the local creatures, and I started taking them out, racking up more kills for my list. Overgrown, Overgrown Pollinator, and Overgrown Elder. Check. I continued with the game, killing as many creatures and competitors as I could. Despite a few close calls, it was actually pretty easy. My new shotgun was really proving its worth even if I was still getting damage from it. Eventually I made it to the aquarium, killed the twins, and was declared the winner. With that done and 3 creatures off my list, I headed back to West Virginia, only to immediately go back to Atlantic City to see the casino quarter. Once there I met Billy Beltbuckles and agreed to help him with his family money problem. I was told to go disable the showman's radio transmitter, which I did, though this resulted in me getting swarmed by them. And it was here that the classic Bethesda bugs started kicking in, as I soon lost a lot of audio effects before the game decided it was too cold and froze up. When I next logged on, I decided to get a few things done before heading back to Atlantic City, including listening to a talking Yaoguai while I hid in a toilet. But just as I'd finished collecting Fox data, I saw that a new event was going on at Point Pleasant, the Mothman Equinox. Given how I'd failed to kill a Mothman the 2 chances I'd had previously, I decided I wasn't going to let this opportunity pass me by. Heading to Point Pleasant, I spoke with Interpreter Clarence, who assigned me with getting things ready for the Mothman's arrival, so I destroyed some vines, battled some radstags, killed some cultists, donated some blood, lit some pyres, and then defended said pyres. During this time, a Mothman did show up, but I didn't get to it on time. Another one then showed up behind me, but the other players were too trigger happy, so I didn't even land a shot on it. I ran around town hoping to find another one, and thankfully I did, and with no one else around, this left me free to kill it. Mothman. Check. And you won't believe this. Right after I stopped off at camp, another event tied to a creature on my list appeared. So I led some Brahmin to their farm, where a certain spiky creature popped out of the ground. But thanks to me and ex-Gerdex, it was soon crossed off my list. Sheepsquatch, check. I then tried finding a vendor known as Minerva, as it said she occasionally sells hunter-like armor, which I was still lacking. However, I think I didn't meet the requirements for her to show, as she wasn't at any of the locations she was supposed to. Once again, going off script, I headed to Fort Atlas to meet the Brotherhood of Steel. I helped them deal with the local population, then dealt with some robots in the basement where Valdez got a little too close for comfort. With that done, I did a few random activities before joining a fog crawler event at Thunder Mountain Power Station. Though the robots there proved to be challenging, I managed to defeat them as well as all of the giant shrimp. Fog crawler. Check. Afterwards, I spent almost 2,000 caps in order to buy the plans for the lever action rifle, solely for the purpose of building more so that I could scrap them and get upgrades. I'll just say now, I don't think this was a worthy investment. Once I'd taken part in another free-range event, I headed to the White Springs golf course and found another creature I needed for my list. Glowing one. Check. Feeling I'd wasted enough time doing other things, I decided to head back to Atlantic City to complete its quests. This time, while defending the radio transmitter, the game worked well, and I managed to kill everything that came my way. After that, I was told to head to a local casino and pull a dead money by breaking into the vault. Heading there, I met a guy named Sticky Fingers and agreed to help him cheat the cheat system. But once I passed the main lobby, I was fired upon by every patron of the casino. Once I had killed them and looted the slot machines, I headed down to the vault and encountered the local wildlife, where this time, instead of freezing, the server crashed and I was kicked out. After a lot of cursing at Todd Howard, I logged back in and this time immediately went back to Atlantic City. Once I'd reached the vault and dealt with its inhabitants, I hid the poker chips before placing the evidence in the slot machines. Billy then informed me that Buttercup had kidnapped him, so I headed to the nightclub to rescue the poor fellow. Despite his name, Buttercup was actually a pretty tough opponent thanks to his power armor and the number of lackeys he had. I decided to deal with the lackeys first, which then allowed me to focus solely on Buttercup. Finally, with the help of Sticky Fingers, I was able to take the little Powerpuff down. I gave Sal the slot machine winnings before freeing Billy and telling him of my triumph. This completed another part of Atlantic City, but I had yet to see the two remaining creatures here I needed to kill. So after a quick stop off back in West Virginia, I headed back to Atlantic City to explore the flooded city center. I fought my way to City Hall, where I agreed to help the mayor with recovering items from the community center. Upon doing so, I had to fight my way through a horde of enemies, one of which was one of the last two creatures I was looking for, and once all of them were dead, I could cross it off the list. Lesser Devil. Check. Having survived all of that, I headed back to West Virginia, where I decided that I was finally tough enough for another attempt at defeating a creature I'd lost to before. And this time, with more explosive ammo and fancy footwork, I took it down. Hermit Crab. Check. I tried a few more spawn locations hoping to find more creatures to kill, but nothing came from it, except finding some anglers that actually fought back against me. Now that I'd wasted enough time, I decided it was time to complete the quest necessary to get the last creature located in Atlantic City. So I headed to the Rose Room, met with Vin and his family, and agreed to help them with a few personal missions. First, I killed the people trying to kill them. Then I agreed to help get Abby some devil's blood to help with her withdrawal. I headed to the White Springs and got permission to head to Atlantic City, despite the fact that I'd already been to every part of it already. Once I was there, I returned to the casino, meeting a guy named Stanley at a typical poker match. Since I'd done some work for the family, he gave me just one task to complete in order to get the blood. After finding my true calling as a clown, I then convinced Zaid that stealing from the family was wrong before then killing Pennywise and his entourage. With the devil's blood in hand, I returned to West Virginia and gave it to Abby. But this wasn't good enough for them, and they decided they now needed an antidote. Me and Vin headed back to Atlantic City and helped a few of his old friends in order to gain some information. Once we found out Vin's dad created the drug, we headed back to the Rose Room to confront him. After he dropped the act, he revealed that we needed the blood of a real Jersey Devil to create a cure. I once again traveled to Atlantic City, this time with Abby and Antonio, in order to draw out the creature. Once all the pieces of the trap were set, me and Antonio faced the Red Menace. Safe to say the fight was tough, and I might have died once during the scuffle, but thanks to my kabloom and keeping my distance, we were able to defeat the devil and cross him off my list. Jersey Devil. Check. Once I'd helped Antonio with his family issues, we gave Abby the cure and headed back to West Virginia, where once again, I was back to hunting animals. Passing by the church in the mire, I checked off another creature from the list. Owlet. Check. Sad to say not much happened after that, as I mostly just ran around the map trying to find the remaining creatures on the list. I tried looking at reported spawn points, walking in random directions, even trying events like Campfire Tales. All of these efforts unfortunately came to naught. But then as I was checking a spawn point for a Grafton monster, I got another hallelujah moment, for I encountered a man going full Legend of Zelda by being chased by a small winged creature, which I promptly saved him from. Chicken. Check. And right after that, I found the spawn point for a much more powerful creature to take off the list. And despite being at a fairly decent level, soon he was down a life, and I, a target. Grafton Monster. Check. I continued my attempts to find the remaining creatures on my list, though most of it was just me running around hoping to run into something. Unfortunately, all I managed to find were a repeat Grafton Monster and Blue Devil. Though for all of you who are thinking the one I killed at the pit stop didn't count, I did manage to kill this Blue Devil on my own, so either way it counts. After many more hours searching West Virginia and doing a few random tasks, I ran into some other players that were close to my level. It was here I attempted to check another creature off my list, and I actually managed to. However, I felt that this creature was too weak and pitiful for my list, so I decided to not count this one. I then decided to sort out my suits of power armor so that it would be ready when it came time to fight the more dangerous creatures. Once again, I was back to running around, shooting repeats, gathering supplies, making repairs, and then doing that all over again. Yeah, for a lot of the final few hours I played of this run, not a lot really happened. I did get lucky and find a Flatwoods monster near the hunting lodge, but my luck then ran out when it saw me and instantly disappeared. Which meant that, you know what? Screw it. I'll just summarize what happened for the next few hours. I killed a lot more repeats, took part in a few public events, discovered some new locations, died a lot, tried killing another player, checked a bunch of spawn points, bought plans for and constructed a power armor station, explored a nuke site, and failed at doing daily ops. After all of that, I still hadn't found any of the creatures left on my list, so instead of running around like an idiot, I decided to do what I did in my last playthrough when I got the dragon. Find a spawn point for cryptids and keep reloading the game in the hope that one will spawn. So I headed for Abby's bunker and began doing just that. After trying this a few times and getting nothing, I made a quick trip back to my camp. And when I checked the nearby spawn point, I found myself facing down another Ogua. Racing back to my camp, I attempted to have my defenses help with killing it. Though first I had to exercise my Second Amendment right to kill intruders in my house. Once that was done, I went back to work taking care of the Ogua. But once I realized my current weapon wouldn't work against it, I decided to take drastic action. One that I think some of you might say disqualifies my run. I headed into my cabin and grabbed my suit of power armor so I'd have better protection. I then took out a 50 cal machine gun I'd found earlier and began firing, which actually started to do some damage to the creature. And since he couldn't cross the fence around me, all I had to do was stay close enough that he wouldn't run away. But despite having close to 1,000 rounds of ammunition, I soon ran out with the creature still alive, so I headed back inside and grabbed the second big hitter I had, a grenade launcher. Unfortunately, my ammo was already low and wasn't doing as much damage as I wanted. What's more, I actually managed to break the thing before I even ran out of ammo. So now it was on to my third heavy hitter, a Gatling plasma. And I'm happy to say that this one dealt much more damage than the last one. Despite the creature's attempts to hide, I soon landed the finishing blow and had another creature off the list. Ogua. Check! Now some of you may say this doesn't count since I didn't use traditional hunting weapons, but let's be real people. There was no way I could kill the remaining creatures on my list with the weapons I had. If I wanted to finish this run within the current year, I needed better weapons. And hey, it's not too much out of the realm of possibility. I mean, even the likes of Craven and Van Pelt upgraded their weapons to defeat tougher opponents. So, as far as I'm concerned, this counts. And hey, look how far I got with just the weapons people usually hunt with. Now with that done, I decided to get myself some better power armor in preparation for my next tough opponent. I gathered supplies and built my own Enclave power armor, making sure to give it a nice camo paint job. After that, I went back to Abby's bunker and began reloading the game hoping for a cryptid encounter. I did take a quick break to complete a few quests and kill a Scorch Beast, but it was still mostly duds. But eventually, after a lot of effort, I finally managed to find a certain floating alien. And unlike the others, this one didn't run away from me, though it was pretty powerful and did manage to tank a few hits. Thankfully, I finally managed to kill it and check it off the list. Flatwoods Monster, check. Now I was down to the final 3 creatures on my list, and I decided the next one would be the one I had chosen not to count earlier. A player character. The true test of my hunting skills, a gamer's version of the most dangerous game, so after a quick look at the map, I headed off to go find someone more my level to take down. First I tried fighting Freeband 00, but he wasn't really interested. Then I tried fighting Turtle Master's Lay, but he quickly got in some power armor and one-shot me. So donning my own power armor and equipping my Gatling Plasma, I continued my search. But unfortunately, Thaxar 3 Action X wasn't in the mood either. And neither was Jeebs 15, Aliabab 194, Cozy Crab, Little Grim, or Eric 22211. Finally, as I was going by the Ash Heap mansions, I ended up finding God of War 420. And after a little coaxing, I got them to return fire, allowing me to deal some damage, and it didn't take much to take them out. Player character, check. Now I only had 2 creatures left, and there's a reason I saved the 2 of them for last. I still needed to kill a Wendigo Colossus and a Scorch Beast Queen. The problem with these is that in order to get both of them to spawn, you need to launch a nuke. And in the 6 years this game has been out, that's something I've never done, simply for the fact of how confusing it used to be to get the codes. Plus, someone else usually launched a nuke every few minutes, so I didn't see the point of doing it myself. But I didn't want to rely on someone else this time, and swore that I was finally going to launch a nuke myself. I just needed to pick which target I'd go after first, but quickly decided that the Scorch Beast Queen should be my endgame, so that meant I was off to battle a giant Wendigo. Now for those who don't know, there are only 2 places where a Wendigo Colossus spawns. One can occasionally spawn inside a nuke zone, but it's not guaranteed. The only guaranteed one to spawn is Earl Williams, a unique variant that appears during the event A Colossal Problem, after nuking Monongah Mine. Given its unique status and the fact that it was guaranteed, I decided to go with this option. I headed out into the wasteland, tracked down a nuclear keycard and the code pieces, then went through the complicated process to decipher them. Except that last part was a lie, as I just used a website online that told me what the current nuke codes were for each silo.
So convenient.
With everything I needed, I traveled to Site Bravo and made my way inside. And as to be expected, I was instantly set upon by robots and turrets. Thanks to my Gatling Plasma and laser, most of these weren't too much of an issue. But as I made my way inside, I soon ran out of ammo for my Gatling Plasma, leaving my Gatling laser as my best option. Now this wasn't a bad weapon, but the upgrades I'd made to increase the power had made it slower, which I wasn't a big fan of. It was because of this that I did end up taking more damage during the run through the silo, since it took longer to defeat the robots and turrets. I guess it was a good thing I brought lots of stim packs. Eventually I reached the control room and began the process of launching a nuke. It was tough dealing with the constant stream of robots coming after me, but I eventually won the day. Once I'd selected Monongah Mine, I headed back outside and stocked up on stim packs while I had time. Once the nuke had touched down, the event started, and I immediately joined. Inside the mine, I met with a few other players before we headed deeper inside to find our target. And once we did, this quickly turned into the most difficult fight of the whole run. Not only did I have to deal with a level 80 Wendigo Colossus, but I also had to deal with its endless spawn as well. I ended up using most of my stim packs during this fight, but that wasn't even the worst part. For you see, I was still using my Gatling laser, which I had just used to get through Site Bravo. In doing so, I used up a lot of fusion cores, the same thing that also powered my power armor. So you can imagine the sense of dread that came over me when halfway through the fight, I completely ran out of fusion cores. Now, left without a powerful weapon or power armor, I started dying. A lot. In fact, the rest of the battle can be summed up as so. I shoot what I can, I die, I respawn, I go back down, and I do it all over again. At the very least, I was still able to help, and I did land plenty of hits on the Colossus itself. I was still a major contributor to this fight, and we were really wearing this thing down. But then, it happened. Just as we were about to kill this thing, I was too distracted healing and ended up dying. And as I respawned back at the top of the mine, my fellow players landed the finishing blow, ending the event. It then immediately sealed up the entrance, meaning I couldn't even go down there and collect the spoils of my victory. No interesting death shot, nothing. Instead, I had to run back to the mine entrance before the whole thing collapsed, leaving me away from the action, in a nuke zone, feeling like a loser. But that's the thing, I wasn't a loser. The creature was dead thanks to my help. I still got plenty of shots in while I was fighting down there, and who knows, maybe they wouldn't have been able to kill it in time if it wasn't for me. That means it still counts. Take it off the list. Wendigo, Colossus, check. And with that, I only had one more creature left to kill, the Scorch Beast Queen. This meant I'd have to find another nuclear key card in order to launch another nuke. That part would be easy, but I didn't want to have a repeat of what happened last time and run out of ammo, so after making sure I had enough fusion cores for my power armor, I made sure to make enough plasma cores since I'd primarily be using my Gatling plasma. Once I'd gotten the key card, I headed this time to Site Alpha, and once again began making my way through. I decided to use my Kabloom for as long as I could in order to save on plasma cores, which wasn't an issue since my shotgun still packed a punch. The only issue I had this time was surprisingly the opposite of the problem last time. I ran out of Stimpaks pretty quickly, and had to use whatever food I had in order to regain health. There were a few close calls, maybe even an occasional death, but I finally managed to get to the control room. This time I chose Fissure Site Prime as the target, then headed off to grab more healing supplies before it touched down. And once it did, it was time. Everything that I had worked for up until this point. Every creature slain, every step taken, every hour spent tracking and searching. It all came down to this. For I ran into that true hell on Earth, found the great split in the ground, and there she was. The Queen. My prey. Me and my fellow hunters wasted no time in firing upon the tyrant, but this wasn't the endgame fight for nothing, for we also had to deal with an army of scorched creatures coming at us from every angle, even up to 2 other scorched beasts. Sad to say I did end up dying once, but then I was right back in the field to continue my hunt. Despite our best efforts, it seemed like nothing would stop this queen. Even after minutes of fighting, she wasn't even at half health, but we weren't going to give up. Our resolve was stronger than any creature I'd hunted. And eventually, after almost 12 minutes of fighting, it was done. The palace announced the news for everyone to hear. The Queen was dead. After more than 60 hours of gameplay, weeks of dedication, and lots of tears, I had emerged victorious. Finally, I could cross it off and complete my list. Scorch Beast Queen. Check. This final victory ended the game and proved that, yes, you can in fact beat Fallout 76 as a hunter, and what's more, you can in fact hunt and kill every organic creature in the game. This was without a doubt the most frustrating playthrough I've ever done. Having to hunt down and kill so many different enemies, some with no guarantee of spawning, was a nightmare to deal with. There were truly some days where I didn't even want to bother finishing this playthrough. But at the same time, this was also the most fun I've had playing Fallout 76. The added challenge of using mostly just hunting weapons, with the even more arduous challenge of killing one of every creature, made me feel like a real hunter. I'm very satisfied with this playthrough, and I hope you are as well. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing, and remember, if you have an idea for a Fallout playthrough challenge, or just a gaming challenge in general, be sure to leave it down in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas. And so, until next time people, ta-ta, and goodbye for now.